And we welcome in Tom Luginbill, National College Football Analyst with ESPN. Your SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent in any of the 82 counties in Mississippi. Coming off rivalry weekend and the coaching carousel. And, man, Lincoln Riley played everybody, it looks like. And I think he made a great decision. It's a great job, path of least resistance. So we'll tee up Tom Luginbill. Lugs, what was your initial reaction when you saw that it was a done deal, Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma to go to Southern Cal?
When he did the mathematical equation of Oklahoma versus LSU versus USC, it was very, very clear, to use your phrase, the path of least resistance to not only a conference championship, but to a college football playoff is out west. And, you know, I think that entering into the SEC with Oklahoma, obviously it's an established program, but there are going to be some inherent challenges, particularly geographically, where they currently reside. And, you know, Lincoln Norman isn't moving to the southeast, right? You look at Texas A&M. Texas A&M entered into the conference in 2011, Bo. And you know what? They sniffed Atlanta once. Then you look at LSU, and you're saying, okay, it's an established SEC program, championship-level resources. They've, won 2 national titles, played in 3 in the last 20 years, everything you'd like to have. But then you look at SC, and you have one competitor, and they shouldn't even be a competitor. And if you win back the state of California, they won't be a competitor, and that's Oregon. And so it makes a lot of sense. If you're Lincoln Riley, you do the math, it's the best job of the 3, including the one he had.
No question. And it's not even close.
It's not even close.
And you know what, Lugs? How many years did you spend out there growing up when your dad was coaching out there?
Well, I was born in Pasadena. My dad coached in the Pac-8 as well as the Pac-10. And then what the Mountain West is now, that used to be called the WAC with BYU, San Diego State, and everybody. So really the first 20 years of my life was spent in either Southern California or Arizona, and that's all I grew up around.
Okay. We need Southern Cal to be good, Tom. In our world of college football, I mean, is it fun to beat up on the Pac-12? I guess. But if Southern Cal is really, really competitive, I just think it makes it that much more fun for college football fans. Your thoughts?
Well, there's no doubt. It's like when Notre Dame's good, college football's better. When Alabama's good, college football's better. What happened with Michigan and Ann Arbor, that made college football better this past weekend. And the thing, but here's the deal with the SC job, is in the old days, you asked about, you know, my background out west and just how things are perceived, is whether it was John McKay, whether it was John Robinson, all the way up to, you know, they had a dip in there in between, but then it was, you know, obviously Pete Carroll and everybody. If there was a great player in the state of California, or even on the West Coast for that matter, and SC wanted him, he was going to SC. And it was everybody else's problem to try to find a replacement. That's just how it was. It's like that for 100 years, and they've lost that edge over the last 7 to 10 years. Now, look at the difference makers in college football from the West Coast, okay? You've had C.J. Stroud, you've had Bryce Young, you have Tua Tagovailoa, you have
Matt Corral,
Kayvon Thibodeau. Yep. I mean, you could just go one after another after that. Matt Corral, you mentioned it right there. They're all West Coast kids. That would have never happened, ever, all right, out west. That's what Lincoln Riley is hired to fix. If he fixes that, everybody else is in trouble.
Tom Luginbill, National College Football Analyst with ESPN, joining us on the Out of Bounds show. I thought Napier to Florida was a good hire too. What did you make of it, Tom?
I think it's a good hire. I think it's good timing. I think the job right now is more of a rehab than it is a rebuild, in the sense that Florida has athletes. What Billy Napier is going to have to do is he's going to have to figure out, do those athletes care about the University of Florida? Do they care about winning? Because I think when I watch Florida this year, what I see is what Florida State has been for the last 4 to 5 years. And I think Scott Strickland saw it too and said, we better nip this in the bud right now. We cannot let this go any further. So Billy Napier's job, in my opinion, is going to be weeding out the bad, weeding out the guys that aren't going to be involved in the buy-in. And that might mean more of an overhaul than people want to hear, but it needs to happen because that team they put on the field this year had no personal care, no personal pride, didn't play with energy, didn't play with passion, and you can't tell me Florida doesn't have athletes. They have athletes. And so, to me, I do think it's a good hire. I think anytime you do the group of five, the Power Five thing, if we're going to be honest, there's always going to be some level of risk there. It's the enormity of the job, all of the different auxiliary things that play off of it, the national exposure, the community exposure. It's just different than it was ever going to be in Lafayette. Just like, it's different if you get a highly touted MAC coach, like a PJ Fleck, and he moves from Western Michigan to a Minnesota. There's going to be increased scrutiny and there's going to be an increased expectation level. That's the nature of the beast, right? And Billy Napier knows it. But the thing I think ultimately that this comes down to is recruiting, and not recruiting against Florida State and Miami. That's the least of Florida's problems right now because they can play with and beat a Florida State and Miami right now. They're recruiting against Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, and LSU and Auburn. So that's who they've got to close the gap against because if they want to be the Florida that they expect themselves to be, forget Miami and Florida State. You better start beating Georgia and Alabama and LSU and Clemson and Auburn and Ohio State on elite players. That's how you're going to close the gap.
I think Billy Napier, he moved the needle at ULL big time in recruiting.
Sure.
And I think he'll do it. I think he'll do it at Florida. You know this. He spent 4 years under Saban, several under Dabo. He gets the whole thing. And I think he'll be able to – I think he'll be willing to throw down a little bit more. And so and plus I think he'll –
absolutely.
I just think he'll be more invested than Dan and so on. And again, I think Dan's a good coach. All right, Harbaugh. Before I get to Matt Corral, I want to knock out a couple of things. Harbaugh. So Michigan shows patience, which no one in the game shows anymore, and allows him to restructure his staff. Plus, he's averaging almost 10 wins a year. It's not like he's going 7-5. And what a game, Lugs. And I know you had to travel to the West Coast and do Oregon State, Oregon. But I watched it all. It was a fun game to watch. Michigan's offensive line dominated Ohio State. Just your takeaway after several years of frustration and the fact that this isn't all on Harbaugh. They've lost 17 of 19 to Ohio State. Your thoughts on Harbaugh finally breaking through and beating Ohio State?
Well, I think it's sensational. And I've been as hard on Jim Harbaugh and that Michigan program as anybody, not because he hasn't built an established program, not because they haven't gotten better under his leadership. They have. But at Michigan, you're expected to win games versus ranked teams. You're expected to play well versus ranked teams, particularly those in the top 10. And his record going into Saturday had been abysmal in those matchups. For whatever reason, whether it's coaching, whether it's the locker room, whether it's a talent gap, which I think their talent has increased significantly. Is it to Ohio State's level right now? I don't think so. Will it ever be? Maybe not, but it can be close enough to have games like we had on Saturday, which is what matters. But this is a huge amount of pressure lifted off their shoulders now. Now their kids can play with confidence. They don't go into the game wondering if they can win. And I'm not just talking about the Ohio State game. I'm talking about highly anticipated matchups versus ranked teams where they had just performed so poorly, like they just didn't belong in the moment. And on Saturday, they did. They were the better team. They may not have the better players top to bottom than Ohio State, but they were the better team on Saturday. Think about it. I had the Michigan State-Purdue game the week after Michigan blew a 16-point lead and lost to Michigan State. The Wolverines should be undefeated, dude. I mean, that's a really good football team that with the weather and the home field environment, They just took advantage of every opportunity, and it was good to see them do it. And the thing that's going to be so interesting about all of this, I don't know if we're done with the carnage yet, Bo. What if, just what if, Baylor beats Oklahoma State? What if Iowa somehow were able to beat Michigan? You could have an Oregon avenge their loss to Utah. And what if Alabama beats Georgia? None of what I just outlined is out of the realm of possibility. All of those things could very reasonably happen, and I didn't even mention Cincinnati and Houston.
All right, I love that.
Think about that.
Lugs is talking chaos on the Out of Bounds show. ESPN.
Every week, baby.
ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Lugs joins us on the Bell's Two-Hearted L guest line. All right, we've been discussing, can anybody challenge Georgia from now through the college football playoff? A lot of people don't think they can. Some people in our business do. Fine. But one of the teams that we usually identify is Ohio State. Tom, Lugs, how did they take this big of a step back considering who they are on the defensive side of the football?
Well, I was stunned to see because their improvement from post-Oregon game, so starting in week 3 to now, had been nothing short of sensational. You look at their turnovers created. I think they led the country in interceptions, tackles for loss, pressures, all of it skyrocketed from week 3 on. So I don't know if I can explain how they went out and performed that poorly, particularly in their run defense, because that's not who they had developed into. Now, I will say this. If you go and you grab a flip card and you look at Ohio State's 2 and 3 deep on defense, it's the youngest Ohio State defense in probably the last decade. Chock full of elite-level players that are freshmen and sophomores.
I got you.
So
okay.
if you want to point to anything, that may be the area that you point to that, all right, they're talented, but maybe they're playing with too many young guys at one point, and they finally caught up against the buzzsaw in a Michigan team that was powerful and strong and point of attack, and that's what I would chalk it up to.
Okay. Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds show. Lugs, I'm trying to get through a lot here this morning. Bama, Georgia, SEC championship game. So Georgia hasn't been challenged all year. Bama has. But now they just played 2 physical games to end the year. Georgia played Charleston Southern and Georgia Tech. But Bama can throw it, and Georgia has not faced any kind of prolific passing attack all year. Having said all that, the right side of Bama's O-line is not good. But if they get the ball out of Bryce's hands, maybe they have a shot to move the ball. Give me the path where Bama can make this a game with 5 minutes left to go in Atlanta this weekend.
Well, I think, number one, we would be very foolish to assume that Alabama will play an offensive football game against Georgia the way they played against Auburn. That I do not see that happening. I think that they will be geared up, poised, and focused to be at their best in the highly anticipated matchup of the year. I mean, essentially, this is the college football playoff game. I mean, that's what this is. And so what they did against Auburn, to me, irrelevant. I would not give 2 cents of credence towards Alabama's offense looking like that against Georgia. I may be completely wrong, but they will be ready to play. Now, I think that for the first time, Georgia is playing a game where talent is equitable across the board. In some instances, Georgia might have some better players. In other instances, Alabama may have some better players. And generally when that happens, it won't be about the plays that are made. It will be about the mistakes that are made. You ask, how does Alabama and Georgia go into the last 5 to 7 minutes of the fourth quarter and have it be a one-possession game? It's going to come down to mistakes.
Okay.
Both teams are too talented to not make plays. They're going to make plays. But do you have a 3rd and 2 on the 28-yard line and get a false start penalty? Now it's 3rd and 7. Next thing you know, you don't convert, but now you have a long field goal and you miss it.
Great point.
Those types of things are going to play a significant role when it's tit for tat and the talent across the board is fairly equal.
I can't do a deep dive here, but I think Bill O'Brien doesn't need to strangle the offense. And when they had to open it up, boy, they looked better. Let your athletes athlete. And you're the underdog for once. Just let it rip against Georgia. All right, Matt Corral.
Yeah.
Tom, he's the best player in America. He should win the Heisman, but he won't because that's not how the whole thing goes. Bryce Young had his quote-unquote Heisman moment against Auburn on Saturday. But you and I have talked about this the last 4 years you've been on. I know you've only got a couple minutes here. Think about – I don't even think Pickett could do it. I don't think Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud could drive Ole Miss to 10-2. But he's that good elevating everybody around him. Your thoughts?
Well, you know how I felt about him going back, a year and a half. And we started coming into the offseason just last, December in January. And I was really high on him. And he did what everybody needed him to do. He cut down on turnovers, right? So to me, he's answered all of the questions. And you're right. Let's not kid ourselves. Ole Miss has good personnel, but he made everybody around him better. He makes defenses have to defend the entire field, the whole field. And to me, with their schedule and their slate of games, he's had a remarkable season. And I think when he gets scrutinized and the pre-draft process starts to unfold, people are going to fall in love with him. He's going to skyrocket up people's boards.
Out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. LSU job is open. Mark Stoops, Aranda, Lane Kiffin, Matt Campbell. What direction do they go?
Well, now they got a competitor in the market. That's the problem, is Oklahoma. So, we've seen the price get jacked up with Mel Tucker and Michigan State, and then, James Franklin at Penn State. I'm still trying to calculate the math with why Jimbo Fisher's getting paid the money he's getting paid with the results so far. And you know what I sent you this morning. You can feel free to read that off if you like. But I just think the price of business just went up because in order for Lincoln Riley to take the job at SC, can you imagine the cost of living increase that he's going to receive to go from Norman to Los Angeles? So that number is going to elevate what now Oklahoma's number is. And because Oklahoma's open, LSU's number may just go up just because it could become a competition. Now, Mark Stoops, I think, is the guy that both programs could gravitate towards. David Aranda, you mentioned. Matt Campbell. I don't know if Matt Campbell's truly a guy that would be the fit at LSU. Not saying it would be a good landing spot. It would be. But maybe the match is better with Oklahoma. But the reality of the situation is, though, it doesn't matter what Oklahoma does. Lincoln Riley did the math, and everybody else is doing the math too, right? If you're going to take that job, you're going to have to be aware and ready for what's coming when that conference realignment shifts and you enter into the SEC. Because I point to Texas A&M every time this discussion comes up. They entered in 2011 outside of Alabama, arguably the greatest resources of any program in the SEC, and they sniffed Atlanta once. So I know we keep talking about that, but if you're going to be the head coach at Oklahoma, you're going to have to recognize that the path is going to be really, really difficult. And to me, that plays a huge factor if both programs are seeking potential hirings of the same guy. That guy is going to start doing the math too.
We'll leave it there. Thanks, Tom Luginbill. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you, buddy.
Tom Luginbill, national college football analyst with ESPN. He joined us on the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line on the Out of Bounds show. And so we hit, obviously, Lincoln Riley, Billy Napier to Florida, which was, as Blake said, that didn't get a lot of play or run because the Lincoln leaving Oklahoma to go to Southern Cal was such a big deal, blue blood to blue blood. Southern Cal's a better job, but Oklahoma is a heck of a job too.
And been the better program over the last 15 years.
No question.
20, I mean, yeah, you take the whole 20.
Other than Carroll's run of 5 years, they have been a better job. And now we still have LSU open. Will, you're on? I mean, I haven't looked at Twitter since we started, so make sure to. I haven't. So make sure we're monitoring
has the LSU
that,
job hired.
Because I think this stuff could break at any moment on But it usually breaks at 10:01 a.m. when we just get off the show.
Accurate.
Which is shame on the athletic directors and agents for doing that. Matt Corral should win the Heisman, and here's why. Well, Bo, why do you say that? Well, because I think how many other quarterbacks could you drop in Oxford and go 10-2 this year? Not in the world, not Aaron Rodgers. I'm talking college football. Probably couldn't. Pickett at Pitt, no. C.J. Stroud at Ohio State, no. Bryce Young at Alabama, who's starting to really feel it, no. And look, Bill O'Brien may be the problem there, Blake. Bill O'Brien may be just conservative enough that he's not allowing all of their athletes to do what they want to do.
He's too old school.
It looked like when they finally had to get after it and open it up, Auburn didn't have an answer. Now, I understand it's different time in the game, and, you may be slightly adjusting on defense, not to a full prevent, but running a little bit different deal, but still. Blake, do you think Bryce Young wins it because of the Auburn heroics? He plays for the Alabama Crimson Tide?
Massive favorite right now.
Okay.
I don't think he'll lose it Saturday.
Wow.
I told you in week 4 when everybody was all hot and bothered, I said Bryce Young's going to win because he's the Alabama quarterback, and that's just the way it works. When you're the Alabama QB, you get the nod. You start at what's Jim Harbaugh say? You start at third base.
Hey, one of our listeners on the Ag Up Equipment text line said that I have the quote of the day so far.
Yeah, let athletes athlete.
Well, when you have them at Alabama, let's not suffocate them. Let's let it rip.
Do you think we get another major job open up because LSU and or Oklahoma steal someone?
Ask again.
Do you believe we get another major job? And I mean major as in a upper half top P5 job. So not top 5, but upper half P5 job open up because Oklahoma and or LSU steal a sitting head coach.
If I had to bet $100, I would bet yes.
Yeah. Like a Mississippi State, Ole Miss, or up job.
Those are good jobs.
Those are great jobs.
Oklahoma State type program, no doubt.
Yeah.
Arkansas. And somebody to keep an eye on is Kendall Browse.
Yeah.
He may be top 2 or 3 offensive coordinator, play caller in the country. I didn't really look at this stuff until Bartu started laying it out several years ago. He absolutely works people. With Blake, they're limited. They're limited.
Yes.
He's that good. He is. And, is he going to hang around? Arkansas? Kendall Browse, the offensive coordinator? You wouldn't think so. Like Lafayette. I go hire Kendall Browse right now.
Yep.
Done. I'm on the phone. You want $2.2 million? Let's roll. You know what you can do if you win here in 4 years. The SEC Insider Hit this morning brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. Good morning. Welcome in on a Max Effort Monday. Coming off the Golden Egg, which stays in Oxford.